Oh, shoot. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We're gonna be testing out a couple new makeup products today. I ordered two things from Sephora a few days ago. They showed up on my porch this morning. I have here in front of me the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Rose Metals palette. And then we're also gonna test out together the Tower 28 mascara that I feel like everyone has been raving about this thing lately. So I'm curious to see what the hype is all about. I haven't looked at this palette yet. I've seen little bits and pieces of what people have posted online and on YouTube, but I've tried not to watch anyone's full videos yet. So I don't even know exactly what the color story of this thing is like, other than just what I saw online, which I don't think included any swatches from what I have looked into so far. But it seems like some people are liking this palette, so I'm very excited to try it. But we'll of course check it out together. We'll do some swatching, and then I'm hoping to do like a daytime look and then transfer that into a more smoky nighttime look. Should be fun. I can't wait to try this thing out. But before we do, special welcome to any of you new visitors here. Happy to have you here at my channel. I hope that you enjoy this video, and I hope that you'll consider subscribing before you leave. Also, make sure notification bell is turned on so that you know each time I upload a new video. And with that said, let's take a look at this palette. Okay, so here's the box that it came in. Let's open this thing up. Very pretty box. I love the taupe, like the sparkly taupe color. Probably the biggest thing that persuaded me to get this palette was how much I love the Nouveau palette. I really unexpectedly fell in love with that palette. So I thought we would give this one a try as well. I imagine that it's kind of the same shape and size as the Nouveau. Actually, let me go grab that palette real quick. Okay, yes, they're exactly the same size and shape. So here's the packaging of the Rose Metal palette. It is very, very pretty. It has this kind of like cracked leather, metallic, really pretty though. It's prettier in person than I think it was online. So let's take a peek at the shadows inside. Oh no. Looks like I've got a broken shadow here. It's not that bad. I think I can press it back in, but this one's a little bit shattered, unfortunately. But oh, these colors look very pretty. It's like it just wasn't in there very tight. Okay, so there is the palette. It is on first glance a little bit deeper than I was expecting. I mean, this is probably the only light shade inside here. Everything else is pretty deep or mid-tone, which is not a bad thing, but definitely more of like a smoky palette, I would imagine. So I will insert for you guys right here a close-up of the palette, of the shadows swatched on my arm so you can see what they look like swatched. But let's just go through some of these and live swatch them. We'll start with the one that I just repressed a little bit, the shade Rose Fire right there in the middle, because I already have it on my finger. Let's do a little, it's very sparkly. Pretty. That's pretty. There's so much sparkle in there, like microscopic sparkle. Very beautiful shade. It's actually not as brassy looking as I was assuming it would be, which is kind of giving me hope because in the pan it looks a lot deeper than it does swatched on my hand. So maybe this is not going to be quite as deep as I was thinking that it might be. What do you guys like when it comes to palettes? Like your ratio of lights or mediums or darks? I generally like to have a really even spread. Like I like an equal amount of lighter shades, an equal amount of midtones, and an equal amount of darks. All right, so I'm obviously very drawn to this shade right here. This is the shade Heavenly. Looks like a kind of champagne green. I love shades like this. In fact, there's a shade similar to this. I think this one might be a little bit lighter than the one inside the Nouveau palette. I'm thinking of this shade right here. This shade might be a little bit more kind of silvery, whereas this one has a little bit more gold. And actually, we'll just go ahead and swatch those side by side, shall we? And they feel different to the touch. They have slightly different formulas. This one I think is a little bit more sparkly, whereas this is like just a true basic metallic. So here's the shade from the Nouveau palette. And then this is the shade from the Rose Metals palette. So there they are side by side. So yes, this is quite a bit lighter, a little bit more golden tone, but still has that tiny kick of green, which I think is so pretty. It is a different formula though. Let's go and swatch. I've got to swatch this taupe shade right here. This is shade Haze. It is so sparkly. Ooh, this one's nice and kind of creamy and metallic feeling. I have a feeling this is the shade that Allie Glines had posted on her thumbnail. It's beautiful. That's another thing that kind of sold me on this palette. I'm a sucker for a good taupe. It is deep. That's not light by any means, but it's very pretty. This one in the corner is the shade Nova. Kind of a khaki bronze, I would say. Pretty. And then this shade right here is shade Nocturne. Probably the deepest shimmer in the palette. Yeah, this is gonna be, if you like smoky eyes, like this would create some really fantastic smoky eyes. In fact, so far, I think it's gonna be hard not to go smoky with this palette, just with what I've swatched so far. Like, this is definitely the lightest shade. Everything else is a little bit more on the smoky side, which I'm not totally opposed to, but I don't usually love a lot of dark shades on my eyes, so it might be a little bit more challenging for me to keep things a little bit more on the light side. Hang on, I'm just gonna re-swatch that gold. Shade Rose Fire. Now let's just swatch these two shades right here. These are both kind of like rosy shades. They look a little bit less metallic, a little bit more of like a, I guess more like a satiny. Yeah, this one's more satin in tone. Still pretty deep. Yeah, this is a dark palette. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's pretty deep. These shades are pretty deep. And then let's swatch the shade above that one, the shade Royal. Okay, so there are all the shimmers in the palette. As you can see, other than these two up here, even the taupe is like a mid-tone, I would say, whereas these are all quite deep and quite dark and smoky. So I imagine anytime I reach into this palette, I'll probably use this shade, which means if I use this a lot, I'll probably run out of this very quickly, because the other shades I'll likely use in such moderation. So I'm gonna wipe these shades off. Actually, let's go over to the other hand and we'll swatch the mattes over here. Let's start with this shade in this top corner, this shade Rose Quartz. This one does look like it has a bit of a sheen, but a very subtle amount of sheen. I would say it's more matte than shimmery. So we'll swatch it over here with the mattes. Ooh, that's pretty. Really soft kind of taupey rose. Then let's swatch this shade down here. This is the shade Ashes. Looks similar to Rose Quartz, but this one is a true matte. It looks a little bit deeper and a little bit less pink in it. More of just a true gray toned brown. Very pretty. Now let's swatch this shade up here, the peach. This is the shade Sunrose. Sorry guys, I know you already saw the swatches, but I feel like I need to swatch these shades before I use it, so I can kind of anticipate how dark these shades are gonna be. That's a beautiful transition shade. That's really pretty. Now let's swatch these last two. First, this one right here. This is the shade Dune. Beautiful, warm, just like a basic red. I don't know that I'd even call that a brown. It's like a muted red. It's very pretty. And then this shade Noble, it's like a basic brown, deep basic brown. Oh yes, it's gonna be gorgeous. Love that. Reminds me of a Juvia's Place brown. Okay, so there we have it. Those are all the shades. As you can see, a lot of deep smoky shades in here. But I do want to try, and first, before we go real smoky, because we can go pretty smoky with this palette, I do want to try and create more of a daytime look, keep things kind of soft and simple, and then we'll really smoke things out with this second look by kind of building on top of our first look. All right, I'm gonna zoom you guys in just a hair and we'll get started with the first look. Okay, now the tough part. Do I want to keep things kind of like cool toned, or do we want to go a little bit warmer? This is tough because I really do want to use that taupe when we go more smoky. Let's do neither. Let's go with the pink right here, the shade Rose Quartz. We're gonna start with that shade in the transition. It's not really warm or cool. It has a bit of soft like rosiness to it that I think will go with pretty much anything else in here that I combine it with. Then I can decide later whether I want to go warm or cool toned with my smoky shade. I'm just taking this on my rougher number 16 and we're gonna start placing this up through the crease. Pretty shade, but yeah, right off the bat, I feel like it's a little smoky. All right, now I'm gonna add a little bit to my lower lash line, same shade. Let's use this brush right here. This is the Sigma E25. I'm gonna put that same shade just on the tip of this brush and just run that lightly under the outer half of my lower lash line. So I want to keep things pretty light for this first look, but I want to add a touch more color before we go in with the lid shade. Let's take this shade right here, the shade right next to the shade I just used. This is the shade Royal. It's more of a satin, but it does have kind of like a pink, like a berry tone to it. I just want a tiny bit of this. Again, we're using that Sigma brush. And we're just going to put this on this outermost corner, like right through the crease, but just keeping it at that outer edge. And now for the lid shade, I want to take the shade Heavenly. We're going to pop a little bit of this. Let's start on the inner half of the lid. This is kind of tricky because I feel like this one's going to be almost too light to go all over the lid, but all the other shimmers are quite a bit darker than this one. I just don't think I want to do the gold because I really want to use the taupe next. So let's just try this. We're just going to put this on the inner half of the lid. We'll start here, like at the inner corner, and just slowly tap this inwards. This is a pretty sheer formula. It's not super thick or overly metallic. It's a little bit more kind of sheer and glittery. So it actually works really well if you're not wanting to put it everywhere. So you can kind of build it up more on the inner part of the lid. Then we can sheer it out as we move outwards. So I know it's pretty simple, pretty basic, but we're gonna stop there for a daytime look. Honestly, this is still a little smoky for me for a daytime look. It's not dark by any means, but it's not as light as I often like to go in the daytime. So that's just something to be aware of. I really feel like it's gonna be a challenge to not get a smoky eye look out of this palette, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you like smoky eye looks. I just generally don't do a smoky eye look super often. So I don't know, I'm kind of already feeling like maybe this palette is not gonna be everything that I was hoping that it might be. Let's add a couple coats of mascara. I'm taking the Tower 28 mascara. So many people talking about this. So yeah, I'm curious about it. Look at that tiny little brush. I did curl my lashes a while ago. It's been a few hours, but they should still be good. Let's just go ahead and apply it. Very lengthening for sure. You guys see that length it's giving me? Okay, here are the finished eyes, the finished mascara. Pretty impressed with this mascara. Very, very lengthening. I mean, this mascara is a curling and lengthening mascara. Pretty easy to apply. It really does like lift your eyelashes and make them seem extra, extra long. I wouldn't call it a thickening mascara in the way that like my It Cosmetics mascara, my Better London mascara, those mascaras make my lashes look really, really full. Like I have a ton of eyelashes. This makes my lashes look good in that they're not clumpy at all. They're very long. They're just not quite as full and as thick as some others. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for in a mascara. I'll let you guys know how this wears on me, how it removes. It does say it has an easy wash off formula, but it doesn't say it's like a tubing mascara. So I'll let you guys know. This actually did remind me quite a bit, the way that it applies, the way it looks on my lashes, of my Thrive Cosmetics. So now I want to transform this look into a more smoky kind of evening appropriate look. So we're just going to jump right in to kind of add to this look. Let's start off by building where we kind of left off with this shade Royal, this kind of pinky purple. I'm going to add a bit more of this just to that outer kind of V area to smoke it out even more. Look at the depth, you guys. That shade, that's not even the darkest shade inside here. There's some serious depth to that. Very like vampy palette, like very deep, sultry, kind of vampy. They are jewel toned and kind of metallic and metally, but they're very dark, most of the shades. So pretty, just not what I use for like the everyday. It's just one tiny little dip into that shade. They are seriously pigmented. I'm gonna take what's left on that brush, very lightly run that under this outer third of my lower lash line. Basically just dragging kind of what's in the outer corner down just to shape out this outer corner. I really like this brush for the outer corner, like doing shaping and detail work in the outer corner. Okay, very pretty. So I'm kind of thinking I want to do this taupe all over the center of the lid, but I'm kind of thinking about doing this shade on the outer corner, or maybe this one right here. That one might be too brown. Let's try this one. We're just gonna apply that with my fingertip just to this outer like third of my lid. And then we'll blend that taupe into this shade. Holy cow, guys. Dark, we're getting smoky. Back to that Sigma E25 brush, I'm just going around the edge here, the top edge, wiping it off in between. Just want to blend out the edges around between that rose and that pewter color that we just put down. Let's add this, I don't really call it a taupe. It's more like a, I don't know, metallic like pewter kind of with a little bit more bronze in it. We're gonna put this all over the center of the lid, but I still want to leave that inner third of my lid open. We're gonna add a little bit more of that first shade that we used. Very pretty metallic quality to that. Even though the shade itself is a little bit on the kind of mid to deep side, the silver sparkle particles inside of it make it look a little brighter on the lid than it otherwise would. So I almost like it better now that it's on my lid than I did when I was swatching. I was worried it would be too dark for me, but it's not It's deep, but it has kind of a brightness to it because of all the silver glitter or silver reflex. That is very pretty. So I just keep wiping my finger off. I'm just gonna smudge out that inner edge so it's not too thick right there. And then I'm gonna take my pinky finger and we're gonna dip back into that kind of golden green, the shade Heavenly. And I really wanna load this up on this inner corner. I want a really bright inner corner and inner lid. Okay, that's gorgeous. My mind is slowly being changed. I was feeling a little critical about this palette for the first little bit. Okay, I feel like that's probably where I would normally stop, but I really want to try out this deep brown right here. So I'm going to take just the smallest amount of this. We're going to use this brush, the Rougher number 2, which is kind of a flat, kind of smudgy brush. And we're going to just dip the very tip of this into that dark brown, very deep chocolatey brown. I'm just going to kind of add a smudgy wing with this shade and lightly feather it into this outer corner. Just gonna add even more richness to this outer corner. And last up, I do want to add some wing liner. So I'm gonna take my Natasha Denona black gel liner just to this outer edge of my upper lash line. All right, and here is the finished nighttime smoky look. It is beautiful. It is very, very pretty. As the look kind of progressed, the palette started to grow on me a little bit. After that first look, I was feeling a little bit regretful, like this palette might just be a little bit too dark and smoky for me. I do still think it's a dark, smoky palette, so if you don't like a little bit darker, a little bit richer, smokier looks, there's not a lot in here that's not going to give you that. In fact, even the taupe that I have all over my lid today, which is really, really beautiful, it's a very impactful shade. So this is by no means like a daytime palette unless you like to wear smoky looks in the daytime, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not really what I typically do. But honestly, other than this shade, and this shade right here, everything else in here does lean a little bit on kind of the smoky, more sultry side. So just be aware of that. I do think this look turned out really beautiful. I do love that taupey silver. I love this silvery reflex in it because it really does look a lot lighter on your lid than the actual kind of undertone of it. So it looks like it's not closing off my eyes as much as a darker shade like that typically would, which I definitely need for my eyes. I just don't look good when I have a dark shade all the way in on my smaller eyes. It really closes off my eyes and it just doesn't look flattering on me personally. I am excited to keep playing with it. I think that these 3 shades could create a really beautiful, beautiful warm look that I would really love to try as well. I just had to give this silver a try and I'm glad that I did because I feel differently about it now than when I first swatched it. I was a little bit worried. As far as how unique this palette is, oh, that's kind of tough to say. I don't know that I own a pewtery shade quite like this. Unless I maybe dig through some of my Sydney Grace singles, I probably could find something similar to that. But within other palettes, I don't know that I own anything quite like this. I would imagine some of the other shades, I have similar things within my collection. It is very deep and very, I don't even know if I'd call it jewel tone per se, because they're pretty neutral shades that just have a lot of richness and depth to them. If you do like a good smoky eye, I think you're gonna love this palette. I would say if you like more of like softer colors and tones on you, if that's what you like to wear, especially for like daytime, I think this is probably a better option. A lot more light and neutral, a lot lighter looks come out of this palette generally than what I think I'm typically going to get out of the Rose Metal palette. I'll be sure to come back and update you guys once I've had a chance to really play with everything. If my thoughts change, as of right now, I'm kind of just feeling so-so about it. It's a good palette. I think the formulas all feel like they're really good quality. It's a pretty color story if you're into those deep, smoky, rich tones, which sometimes I am, sometimes not so much. As for the mascara, I'm pretty impressed with this mascara. I'm excited to see how it wears. I'm very curious to see how this removes and also how it wears on my eyes when they're a little bit more watery. Maybe I'll cut an onion for dinner tonight to kind of put it to the test because I can't really just make my eyes water on command unless I'm cutting an onion. I'll definitely come back soon and let you guys know how this wore on me. If you like a mascara that does not clump at all, this is the type of mascara that I think people that do not like clumpy looking lashes would really love because very good separation. I didn't notice one single clump to comb out while I was applying this. It was very, very easy to apply and I love how it holds a curl really well. But I think that's gonna do it for today. Let me know what you guys thought of this palette. Did you pass on this one? Did you try it out? What did you think of it? If you did you also find it was a little bit smokier than maybe you were anticipating? I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Also, have you tried out this mascara? Do you love it? Do you not love it so much? It is kind of pricey, 20 bucks. And the palette is pricey as well, $55 for these palettes, which is really getting up there close to like Natasha Denona levels. So I don't know. I'll of course keep you guys updated. I am due for a speed review video. I have accumulated a lot of products that I need to update you guys on, some of which have worked out well for me and some of which have not at all. So I will do that in the next couple of weeks. Keep an eye out for that, and let that be a reminder to you, if you have not yet subscribed, make sure to do that before you leave. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope that you are all doing well, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.
The movies won't turn on.
Oh, probably because your timer went off. Just go do something else for a little while, okay? Yes?